As you can tell, for my bar mitzvah, I didn't neither have the time, nor did I want to go through the entire Torah portion chanting, "You're welcome." I've, however, planned to share a few words with you. You know, like a good bar mitzvah boy, I have written them. As I always told them, don't staple them because you want to be able to slide the paper. I am blessed for so many reasons, but I am blessed, I feel truly, with this as my birth portion. I didn't know this was my birth portion until I came to Bet Aleph. And Rabbi Ted, at the time, and I have continued this tradition, helped us all to discover and study the message within each of our Torah portion, the Torah portion that was studied and chanted the week that we were born. And I know everyone feels the same way I feel about their birth Torah portion. Not only is this Torah portion in the middle of the Torah, but to me, the verse which starts Kedoshim, which is the name of the Torah portion, and that I included in my chanting, really for me, those verses that I shared with you, especially that first verse, should have been, should have been the verse of the preamble to the Torah, if such a thing had ever existed. In the same fashion that we, the people, grounds the U.S. Constitution that follows in the purpose of establishing a democracy, so does this verse establish, as far as I can tell, the entire purpose of the Torah. In fact, I would go so far as to say the entire rabbinic tradition of the last 2,000 years. Kedoshim tihiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. This verse, usually translated as you saw, "You shall be holy, for I, the eternal your God, am holy." But I prefer to this most common interpretation, because as you know, I have said before, every translation is an interpretation in of itself, one by Everett Fox. "Holy are you to be, for holy am I, Yud-He-Vav-He, your God." Why? Because what Everett Fox points to, which is fascinating, is that in Hebrew, the future tense and the imperative follow the same modality of conjugation. Only in understanding the context of the sentence do you actually find out whether it's an exclamation or it's a future. Which is why Everett Fox translated the verse as if it was an imperative and not a future tense. You could retell what he was doing by writing, "Holy are you!" exclamation point. "For holy am I, Yud-He-Vav-He, your God." The point is that I think Everett Fox makes very clearly is that we are not asked to pursue becoming holy. As in, you shall be holy. You shall become holy. You shall, work towards becoming holy. As far as my understanding, and piggybacking on Everett Fox, that's an impossible goal for any one of us to become holy. Something that we would strive to achieve sometime in the future, something that we would have to attain, something that isn't yet but needs to be achieved. But God would never ask us to accomplish something beyond human reach. Furthermore, if being holy was something to be gained, to be found sometime down the road, something to work toward and eventually realize, then you and me, we would continue to postpone it. We would continue to postpone it because we would remain unconvinced, in fact, of our holiness, and we would forever continue to try actualizing it. Rather, what God's injunction is, and for me, is what sets the purpose for the entire Torah, the entire Jewish spiritual endeavor, is in fact an invitation to the radical present reality of our actual holiness. Let me say that again. This verse is an invitation into the radical present reality of our actual holiness. Not one to work toward, but one to realize we already are right now. So a better translation of this verse, which would be the great preamble to this millennia-old Jewish constitution, would be, know yourself to be holy. Know yourself to be holy, for I, the Eternal One, manifesting as you, am holy. Now, the implications of such a preamble to the Torah, really a preamble to our lives, are momentous. Like, think about it. What would your life look like if you really, truly allowed this in? What would your life look like if you truly and really allowed in that you are holy? Beyond that, the reason that you are holy, according to our verse, is that God is holy. God, as the totality of creation, as this uni or multiverse, God is holy. The totality of what is, every molecule, atom, quark, string, is unboundedly holy because every cell, molecule, atom, quark, or string is God. Just like every planet, every star, every solar system, every galaxy, and every universe, however many there may be, that also is God. From the infinitely small to the infinitely vast, it's God all the way up and all the way down. As the Torah tells us, Ein od milvado, there is nothing but that which alone is. Every level of organization is another way of discovering what God looks like. And you are what God looks like at this level of organization. This physical shape that is called you is what the Torah tells us, the garment of God. The garment of God. God is dressed up as you. Now, what would your life be like if you could relate to this garment of skin as what it truly is, a vehicle for the divine presence, a container of divine light? Now, I am like you. I find it extremely difficult to hold this ongoingly, this consciousness ongoingly. I am mostly able to do so when I'm deep in meditation. Beyond that, I leave little crumbs for remembering everywhere I find myself. I kid you not, I have little 2x4 cards strewn around my desk with messages spiritual quote that I wrote to myself, that I have to look at every day because it's on all sides of my computer. I wear a kippah. I wear a kippah to remind me of this as the garment of the true divine light within. I do my best to say my blessings every opportunity I get, because saying blessings drops me back into, oh, this is what's going on right now, when I for a second get out of my mind. But I guess like you, I am inconsistent and I am forgetful. My only excuse is that too, this forgetfulness is also an expression of God. So I'm already forgiven. There's nothing to forgive, and no one to forgive. So I tried really to be kind and compassionate toward myself, and not to beat myself up, with sentences like, as a rabbi, I should really be living ongoingly from that place. Or another one, as someone who has practiced this for decades and professes to teach others, I should be embodying this awareness nonstop by now. What kind of rabbi am I anyways? And I'm sure you have your own sentences running in your mind as well, because that's how the mind works. That's what the mind does in this always discontent mind. Always with its shoulds and coulds and would haves and should haves and why nots. Which leads me to my big reveal for tonight. As part of my ordination 13 years ago, the rabbis who were invited to bless me were given a question to ponder and to respond to as part of their short speech. And the question was, and I quote, "When did it dawn on you that you were a rabbi?" When did it dawn on you that you were a rabbi? And the implication to the question itself was that, being a rabbi had little to do with being ordained and everything to do with the journey that began with the ordination. And this realization was nothing more, in fact, than a stop along the way that pushed you to finally embody what the title bestowed upon you and what that represented. And I don't know, but I venture to believe that, as everyone probably does, I had real preconceived notion as to what that will look like when I finally figured out that I'm truly a rabbi. In those early years, actually, these notions revolved around exactly what I shared earlier. I thought that through my studies and through the deepening of my practices, I would finally reach the stage of existing and embodying day in and day out the highest spiritual states. Then I would know that I am a rabbi. But as someone asked me some years ago, and I quote directly, "So, are you already all spiritual and shit?" You know who you are. And you're not the only one. It's very interesting. I replied to that gorgeous question, quote, "Mostly the latter, except on Tuesdays and some Shabbats." But after 13 years, I can tell you that it was never through the few spiritual openings and breakthroughs I was blessed to experience along the way that my rabbihood became solidified. No. In fact, it was in the most unexpected moment that it finally dawned on me that I was a rabbi, and it had nothing to do with, quote again, being all spiritual and shit. As part of my main talk on Rosh Hashanah 2019, the last one before COVID, you might not remember because, again, it was all the way back to the BC era, the before COVID era. I told the story of the starfish. You remember that. And I was inviting you at the end of my talk to find your starfish. And I also shared with you that this community, all of you, each and every one of you, I had realized were my starfish story. That this community was the way I have been gifted to make a difference, however small, like a pebble in the ocean of suffering, really. But my opportunity to make a small difference in this world. And this small awakening, really, this small insight was inspired by an event that took place 3 years ago, exactly at that time of the year. If you remember, that was the 10th anniversary of my ordination, and there was a big party that evening, that night. And that was the moment. Because that night I felt the overwhelming wave after wave of love and gratitude that I received from all of you. From all of you. And in that moment, you don't know this, but you had this magic power. And this unexpected effect that your love and your generosity and your gratitude just suddenly grounded me deeply in this role that I play in front of you most days. It is in that moment that I realized suddenly that I had become a rabbi. Not a rabbi as in an it, but someone's rabbi. Because I found that you cannot be a rabbi on your own. You are a rabbi in relationship. And I had become someone's rabbi. And it is through your eyes and your love that it dawned on me that I was this community's rabbi. And I allowed this deep affirmation, I allowed it in. And I let it flood my entire being. And as it did, it brought me great peace, great peace. He brought me groundedness. It wasn't the spiritual aha that one maybe I had imagined would be, but it was a communal yes. It was that communal yes, that affirmation that night that was the missing piece of my ordination 13 years ago. And I became a rabbi that night, thanks to you. It's not even that I found my starfish. It's more that my starfish found me. And for that, Modéani. Know yourself to be holy, for I, the Eternal One, manifesting as you am holy, is the theme, the message for me for my inner life journey, from my birth to our portion. It seems to also have become part of the work of my outer life journey as a rabbi. This teaching from the Torah, this one verse that it appears I am meant to share. I am meant to teach, to guide others and myself to discover, to embody, to live from. It is, how can I say, it is a beautiful and powerful burden. May I be worthy. Amen.